Before we get started, I wanted to let everybody know that I have a new book that is available on Kindle, and it is called Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. 50 pages long, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Other than that, it's $3.99. So again, that is Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. And now, on with the podcast.
don't think I ever got over my grandmother's death when I was a kid. My grandmother died from a heart attack during my 9th birthday party. Literally while she was eating cake. And I guess that must have screwed me up a little bit, I mean, I still have birthday parties, but now I'm just careful what I wish for.
Good morning. It's Monday, Cold War Monday, May the 11th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company and the Cold War. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you, Varney and Company,
Much for being here. Varney and Company picks it up now, and David Asman's in for Stu. David, take it away.
What a great show you had. Thank you very much, Maria. I'm David Asman in for Stuart Varney. Stuart, as Maria just said, will be back tomorrow. President Trump is slamming Iran's latest attempt to end the war. The president said on Truth Social, "I don't like it. Totally unacceptable!" Exclamation point. Senator Lindsey Graham says it may be time to consider changing course. His words. Well, the futures are down a bit in the Iran news, but they still show this remarkable resilience under the pressure. The Dow is down about 76 points, S&P is down about 11, and NASDAQ is down about 27. Investors appear to be looking through the Iran story, focusing this week on the American consumer. This week we have fresh inflation data, we got retail sales, earnings from several major consumer brands, all on deck. The big question, does the rally still have room to run? Oil this morning getting close to that $100 mark, 98 for the West Texas crude. The national average for a regular gallon of gas is $4.52. Diesel is now $5.63. And in California, regulars $6.15. And with gas prices surging nationwide, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the Trump administration is open to suspending the federal gas tax. Plus, Americans evacuated from the cruise ship linked to the deadly hantavirus outbreak have been flown now to Nebraska, where they've been taken to the National Quarantine Center to be monitored for symptoms. It is Monday, May 11, 2026.
And there you go. It's the Ass Man subbing for Stuart Varney, who is taking a long weekend. Gee, what a shock. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. You know, it's a fascinating thing when we finally rise, when we stop apologizing for our existence and start standing on our own 2 feet, really standing, something remarkable happens. We become formidable, not aggressive, not cruel, but strong. And strength, true strength, terrifies those who survive on manipulation. When we begin to rise, truly rise, after enduring the psychological storm of illiberal abuse, something fundamental begins to shift. We're no longer living in reaction to chaos. We're not walking on eggshells or over-explaining. We're becoming sovereign, grounded in truth, and capable of navigating life without needing approval from the very liberal who once made us question our worth. And that precisely is what terrifies the liberal. We have understood something foundational. Liberals thrive on control. Not the way a disciplined leader exerts order, but in the way a puppeteer controls marionettes, string by string, emotion by emotion. They construct their sense of self through domination by orchestrating your reality to reflect their needs, fears, and insecurities. But they don't simply want to be admired. They need to be the center of our emotional world. Our joy, our pain, our anger almost orbit around them. When that stops, their illusion of power begins to crumble. The liberals' control isn't always loud. It can be subtle, silent treatment, passive-aggressive remarks, strategic praise followed by sudden withdrawal. It is designed to leave us confused and chasing validation. As long as we're emotionally invested in decoding them, they are in control. And for a long time, that dynamic can feel normal. It becomes the air we breathe, a warped version of connection that slowly erodes our identity. But once we begin to see it for what it is, a manipulation, we also begin to detach. That detachment is a subtle reclaiming of our inner world. That's when the liberal starts to panic. Control isn't just a preference for them, it's a form of psychological oxygen. Without it, they begin to suffocate. And unlike us who have spent time building inner strength, learning, healing, they haven't. Their entire emotional world is externalized. They don't know how to self-regulate, how to sit with the truth of who they are without projecting it onto somebody else. So when we become immune to their tactics, our responses become calm, detached, even indifferent. That's existentially threatening for them. We've just robbed them of their identities. They may smile, they may act unaffected, but inside the liberal is spiraling. They're watching us closely, testing to see if our strength is real or performative. They'll send a text. It's just ambiguous enough to bait us. They'll bring up old memories, hoping to trigger nostalgia. They may even try kindness, throwing us off with words they know we once craved. But behind all of it is the same motive: regain control. This fear of losing control can push the liberal into what seems like irrational behavior. We might see them act out publicly, create conflict out of nowhere, or suddenly reach out to mutual friends with half-truths. But what we're witnessing is desperation, master's strategy. They are scrambling to maintain the structure of the reality they once controlled, and the more poised we remain, the more unstable they become, because in their mind, our strength is not growth, it's betrayal. It's crucial to realize that liberal control isn't just about dominance, it's about survival. They control others to avoid facing themselves. If we're no longer under their influence, they are forced to confront what they've spent their whole life running from: their own emptiness. Our strength holds up a mirror, and they hate what they see reflected back, not because of us, but because of the parts of themselves they cannot bear to examine. This is why our evolution is so threatening to them. Not only are we no longer a source of supply, but we've also become a reminder of everything they pretend to be. They aren't resilient, self-aware, or emotionally autonomous. Every boundary we set, every time we choose silence over engagement, we strip them of the illusion that they matter more than our peace. And in their world, peace is irrelevant unless it revolves around them. The liberal fears losing. This reveals their truest nature. When charm no longer works, when guilt loses its grip, when manipulation falls flat, they become raw, exposed. We start to see them not as the powerful figure they portrayed, but as someone deeply afraid of their own irrelevance. And make no mistake, they fear. The silence speaks louder than any argument. The absence of our reaction becomes the proof that they've lost their hold. When a liberal sees strength in us, real, unshakable strength, doesn't inspire respect, it threatens them. They often double down. That's when they prepare their final manipulation, a desperate attempt to reestablish dominance before they lose their grip entirely. We have to remember, liberals study people. They're not wise in the sense of understanding themselves, but they are highly observant of what triggers others. If they've been close to us, they know what once worked. They know our fears, our hopes, our insecurities. So when our strength begins to emerge, their initial response is not necessarily to open an attack. Instead, they'll try to adapt. They'll put on a new mask. They'll become temporarily agreeable, accommodating, even vulnerable. Not because they've changed, but because they're testing for cracks in our armor. This stage is dangerous because it's seductive. Our growth may have been hard-won. We've learned boundaries. We've disconnected from emotional chaos, and we've stopped trying to fix what was never ours to fix. But part of us may still remember the old dynamic, the emotional highs and lows, the intermittent reinforcements that kept us hooked. So when the liberal returns with what appears to be humility or emotional openness, it can be confusing, but that confusion is the entry point they're looking for. They interpret your strength as an obstacle, and the final manipulation is designed to make us question whether we're being too cold, too harsh, too unforgiving. They might say things like, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," or "You were right about me," or even, "I missed the way we used to talk." These statements are not necessarily false in content, but they're strategically deployed. They're not root in a genuine desire to repair or evolve. They're calculated attempts to soften our resistance. If they can make us feel like we're being unfair, they regain a form of control. Because once again, our focus shifts away from ourselves and back onto them. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Maria Bartiromo, it's her Sunday morning program.
Manufacturing capability has been wildly successful, and now the Iranians have a choice. They can move down a path to peace and prosperity. The great Persian society, the great Persian people, is a great civilization, but it's been run by radicals for 50 years. If they get...
Okay, so there you go. He's making the Persian people out to be the victims here. We're back to this idea that we're fighting a regime rather than all of Persia/Iran. And that's just simply untrue. The fact of the matter is that the Persian people are as much to blame for what's going on and what's happening to them as their leadership. It is the Persian people that have put this leadership in place and supported it for 50 years. Okay, and in this turmoil where there's protests in Iran, none of these protesters are saying, I love Israel, I love the United States. None of them. And until I hear that from these folks, I don't trust them any farther than I can throw them. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, this military operation is against the entire Iranian people, the leadership, rank and file, everybody. And that's the way it should be. If we're going to go to war, we go to war against an entire country, not just the leadership. If you're going to go against a leadership, that's more like assassination. And we could probably do that. Hire people that, both civilian and military, to bring their sniper rifles, sneak into Iran and pick these guys off one at a time. Save ourselves a whole lot of money, time, and energy. But the fact of the matter is, it is the Iranian people that support all these ideas of death to America and death to Israel. And until they change their mind on that, forget it. Back in a minute. Thank you. More from Sunday Morning Futures with Maria.
And, Senator, still no agreement from the Democrats in terms of funding ICE and Border Patrol. What are your expectations for the reconciliation package? Will you be able to get that on the president's desk by June?
I think we will. Listen, this has been absolute political theater by the Democrats, by Chuck Schumer. If you ever doubted their ability to drive over a cliff, to not pay members of TSA, the Secret Service, CISA, our cybersecurity protection in a time when the threat is growing, they're willing to do anything to try to go after President Trump.
Okay, so he's misrepresenting all of this and doing it deliberately. This whole lock thing, where a particular bill is all locked up, is just political theater. Both sides are using the TSA funding as leverage to get more campaign contributions from their supporters. I've been getting emails and phone calls and messages from the GOP. I mean, it just never ends. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's furious. And I've told them, nothing. You get nothing until you produce. You produce something, then come back and ask me for money. We're not going to do this. I'm not going to give you money on spec. But anyways, this is deliberate on both the Democrat and the Republicans' part. They both see an opportunity when they lock up the government like this. They haven't had a budget in a long time. Why not? Because budgets don't serve their interests as well as continuing resolutions. Every few months we have a continuing resolution, and that's the perfect opportunity to try and milk their supporters for a few extra dollars. I'm not going to go for it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Cold War.
You do not put a ballistic missile submarine off the coast of your enemy unless you are certain it cannot be found. The ocean is vast. Sound propagates unpredictably through thermal layers and salinity gradients. A submerged submarine running silent with reactor at minimal power becomes a ghost, invisible to radar, undetectable to the human eye, concealed beneath millions of tons of seawater that swallow radio waves and bend sonar beams into useless echoes. This was the fundamental assumption of nuclear deterrence in 1961. This was the promise that justified parking Soviet boats armed with nuclear-tipped missiles within strike range of New York and Washington. The ocean, naval strategists believed, provided sanctuary. Depth equaled invisibility. Silence equaled survival. But in October 1961, one patrol shattered that assumption so completely that it would reshape the entire trajectory of Cold War submarine warfare. Captain First Rank Nikolai Vladimirovich Zateyev was not a man given to fear. He had commanded submarines through the chaos of post-war Arctic operations. He had survived the reactor accident aboard K-19 just 3 months earlier, the incident that killed 8 of his men and earned his boat the nickname Hiroshima. He understood pressure, both the physical kind that could crush a hull like an eggshell and the psychological variety that broke lesser officers. When he received orders in early October to take K-19 on patrol off the American eastern seaboard, he accepted them with the calm professionalism expected of a Soviet submarine captain. The boat had been repaired. The reactor plant functioned within acceptable parameters. His crew, though still traumatized, remained disciplined and competent. K-19 was a Project 658 submarine, what NATO intelligence designated hotel class. She displaced 5,000 tons submerged, stretched 114 meters from bow to stern, and carried 3 R-13 ballistic missiles in a towering sail that made her silhouette unmistakable. Those missiles represented the cutting edge of Soviet strategic capability in 1961. Each carried a nuclear warhead. Each could strike targets 650 kilometers away. The range was pathetically short by later standards. Future Soviet missile boats would launch from home waters and still reach American cities. But in 1961, 650 kilometers meant K-19 had to approach the American coast, had to lurk in the continental shelf waters where detection meant certain death. The Hotel-class boats were crude instruments. Their pressurized water reactors, unlike the quieter designs that would come later, hummed and vibrated like factories. Their reduction gears whined at frequencies that carried for kilometers through favorable acoustic conditions. Their hulls, not yet coated with the anechoic tiles that would dampen sonar returns, reflected sound like mirrors. Soviet naval architects knew these boats were noisy. They accepted it as the price of rapid development, the cost of matching American strategic capability before perfecting the engineering. The ocean was vast, they reasoned. The Americans possessed good sonar, but not miraculous sonar. Proper tactics, slow speeds, minimal machinery, careful depth selection would provide adequate concealment. This was the conventional wisdom that Zateyev carried with him as K-19 departed Zapadnaya Litsa on October 8, 1961. The Northern Fleet intelligence briefing had been thorough. American anti-submarine warfare forces were competent but predictable. They searched in patterns, swept areas based on probability calculations, deployed sonobuoys along suspected transit routes. A skilled captain could evade such searches through patience and discipline. The key was maintaining acoustic stealth, running slowly, avoiding cavitation, keeping the reactor plant whisper quiet, enforcing absolute silence among the crew. The transit across the North Atlantic proceeded without incident. K-19 followed a carefully plotted route that avoided known NATO patrol areas, diving deep during daylight hours when maritime patrol aircraft might spot a periscope wake, surfacing only briefly at night to ventilate the boat and recharge batteries for emergency propulsion. Zateyev ran drills constantly, silent running procedures, emergency deep maneuvers, missile launch sequences that his crew executed with mechanical precision despite their exhaustion. By October 11th, K-19 had reached the approaches to the American continental shelf, still undetected, still confident in the ocean's protective concealment. The patrol station lay 140 nautical miles east of Cape Cod, in water deep enough to dive if threatened, but shallow enough that bottom topography might mask their acoustic signature from American shore-based listening posts. Zateyev brought K-19 to periscope depth at 0300 hours on October 12th, scanning the horizon through optics that revealed only empty darkness and the distant glow of coastal cities beyond the curve of the Earth. No surface contacts, no aircraft, no indication that American forces had detected their approach. He ordered the dive to 150 meters, reduced speed to 4 knots, secured all non-essential machinery. The central command post fell silent except for the whisper of ventilation fans and the occasional murmured report from watchstanders. Condensation beaded on every metal surface despite the October chills seeping through the hull. The air tasted of diesel fuel and human sweat, and the metallic tang of recycled atmosphere. This was the environment where Zatayev felt most capable, the controlled chaos of a nuclear submarine operating in hostile waters, every crew member functioning as part of an integrated organism, the boat itself an extension of his consciousness. Think about what it means to command such a vessel. You hold the power to incinerate cities. 3 missiles, 3 warheads, 3 opportunities to deliver. Nuclear fire against civilian populations who have no idea you are lurking just beyond their coastal waters. But that power means nothing if you cannot reach the launch position, cannot survive long enough to receive firing authorization, cannot escape the inevitable American response that would follow the moment those missiles broke the surface. Everything depends on remaining undetected. Everything hinges on the assumption that the ocean hides you from enemy sensors. At 0347 hours, that assumption died. The sonar operator's report cuts through the silence like a blade. Captain, active sonar, bearing 045, American destroyer signature. Zatayev moves to the plotting table where the navigation officer has already marked the contact, 7 kilometers distant, sweeping back and forth in a standard search pattern. This is not unusual. This is not cause for alarm. American destroyers patrol these waters constantly. Their sonar is good, but not exceptional. At this range, at this depth, with K-19 running silent, detection should be impossible. Zatayev orders a turn to the southwest, away from the searching destroyer, simultaneously increasing depth to 200 meters, where the thermal layer should bend sonar waves away from his hull. Standard evasion. Textbook procedure. He watches the chronometer, counting the minutes, waiting for the destroyer to continue its search pattern and move away into the darkness. 17 minutes later, the nightmare begins. Multiple splashes, directly overhead. The sonar operator's voice carries an edge of confusion, not yet fear. Pattern indicates sonobuoy deployment, Captain. Zatayev feels his stomach contract. The destroyer had been 7 kilometers away, moving on a reciprocal course. There is no reason, no tactical justification for dropping passive listening devices at this location. Unless they knew. Unless somehow, impossibly, American forces had detected K-19's exact position, despite the depth, despite the silence, despite the thermal layer that should render them invisible. You are standing in that central command post now. The red lighting preserves night vision, but creates an atmosphere of arterial urgency. Every face around you is pale, controlled, professional. But you can see the questions forming behind their eyes. How did the Americans know where to drop those sonobuoys? The boat is silent. The machinery barely whispers. The ocean should protect us. 3 minutes pass. 5 minutes. The passive listening devices are drifting in the current above them. Hydrophones extended like the sensory organs of some blind predator, waiting to detect the acoustic signature of a submarine that is trying desperately not to exist. Then the sound that submariners dread more than any other. High-speed screws, cutting through water, multiple contacts converging from different bearings. 2 additional surface contacts, Captain. They are forming a triangle around our position, Zatayev's. Mind races through possibilities. Random chance. 3 ships happening to converge on this exact piece of ocean. Mathematically absurd. A coincidental search pattern that happened to bracket K-19's location. Tactically implausible. Which leaves only one explanation, one possibility, that violates everything he understands about submarine warfare. The Americans know where he is. Not approximately, not probably. They know, with precision that suggests they can see through 300 meters of seawater as easily as looking through glass. He orders full silent running. Every non-essential system shuts down. Crew members freeze at their stations, some men holding their breath as if their respiration might somehow leak through the hull and betray them. The hotel-class boats are not designed for this kind of silence. Their reactors make them some of the noisiest submarines in the Soviet fleet. But Zatayev demands the impossible, because the alternative is accepting that they are completely transparent to American sensors. The submarine drifts through the black water. The temperature inside the hull drops as ventilation secures. Men begin shivering at their posts, their breath visible in the red-lit spaces. The only sounds are the whisper of water flowing past the hull and the mechanical breathing of carbon dioxide scrubbers that keep the atmosphere marginally breathable. Above them, the American ships hold position. Their active sonar pulses hammer through the hull every 90 seconds. Rhythmic, mechanical, patient. They are not searching. They are measuring, tracking, demonstrating that they know exactly where K-19 sits in the water column, that they could prosecute with torpedoes anytime they choose, that the submarine survives only because the Americans permit it. After 40 minutes of this psychological torture, Zatayev makes a decision. He cannot remain stationary. The battery reserves will not support indefinite silent running, and the crew's morale is beginning to fracture under the stress of being hunted by an enemy who should not be able to find them. He orders a creep, 2 knots, barely enough speed to maintain depth control, a slow drift toward the east, where deeper water might offer some tactical advantage. Within 12 minutes, the surface contacts adjust their formation. They slide across the ocean surface with mechanical precision, re-establishing their geometric pattern around K-19's new position. They are not reacting to detection. They are simply updating their formation based on perfect knowledge of the submarine's location. This is the moment when Zatayev understands that everything he believed about submarine warfare is wrong. The Americans are not lucky. They are not executing a brilliant tactical maneuver. They possess some capability, some technology, some system that renders Soviet submarines visible regardless of depth, regardless of silence, regardless of the ocean conditions that should provide concealment. K-19 is not fighting a tactical battle. K-19 is swimming through an enemy surveillance grid that she cannot see, cannot understand, and cannot escape. The captain orders emergency deep. The diving officer pushes the planes down, flooding ballast tanks, sending K-19 plunging toward the continental slope at 300 meters depth. Simultaneously, Zatayev orders flank speed. Push the reactor to maximum output. Spin the propellers fast enough that cavitation creates a roaring acoustic signature that will mask their exact heading. If the Americans can track them anyway, there is no point in maintaining silence. Speed becomes the only hope. Run fast enough, far enough, that perhaps they can break contact through sheer distance and acoustic confusion. The boat tilts forward, the deck angling down at 15 degrees as she drives toward the bottom. Men grab handholds, equipment rattles in unsecured lockers. The hull groans under increasing pressure. The reactor plant howls as it pours steam through the turbines. The reduction gears whine at frequencies that make teeth ache. K-19 sounds like a factory now, broadcasting her position across the entire Western Atlantic. But Zatayev no longer cares about acoustic stealth, because stealth has proven to be an illusion. The American ships follow. For 6 hours, they maintain contact. K-19 zigzags through the underwater canyons of the continental slope, turns randomly every 20 minutes, varies speed from flank to creep and back to flank. The Soviet submarine crew executes every evasion tactic in their doctrine. Thermal layer exploitation, knuckles of disturbed water to confuse homing torpedoes, course reversals designed to put pursuers ahead of them. Nothing works. The American surface ships adjust their positions with each maneuver, sometimes falling back to maintain safe separation. sometimes closing in, as if to demonstrate they could engage at will, but never losing contact. If you find this kind of underwater psychological warfare as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of silent courage and technological competition deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. At 14:20 hours on October 12th, K-19 finds temporary refuge in the acoustic shadow of an undersea ridge, a geological formation that blocks sound propagation and creates a dead zone where sonar cannot penetrate. Zatayev uses the brief concealment to sprint north at maximum speed, putting distance between his boat and the American hunters. For 2 hours they run undetected, and for 2 hours the crew allows themselves to hope that perhaps they have finally escaped. But Zatayev knows better. He knows that the Americans let them go. They demonstrated their capability, tracking K-19 continuously for 6 hours through every evasion attempt in Soviet doctrine. And then they opened the cage door to let the wounded animal crawl back to its den. This was not tactical failure on the American side. This was a message, a demonstration of superiority so complete that destroying K-19 would have been redundant. The Americans wanted Soviet submarine crews to know they were visible, wanted that knowledge to spread through the Northern Fleet, wanted future patrols to operate under the psychological burden of knowing the ocean provided no sanctuary. The transit back to Zapadnaya Litsa takes 8 days. Zatayev maintains strict silence about the incident, refusing to discuss what happened, even with his senior officers. The crew processes their experience privately, in whispered conversations, in the berthing spaces, in the 1,000-meter stares of men who have confronted their own irrelevance. They had trained for years, mastered their equipment, executed their procedures with precision. None of it mattered. They were transparent to an enemy surveillance system they could not comprehend. K-19 arrives at Zapadnaya Litsa on October 20th. Zatayev's patrol report is classified immediately, stamped with red diagonal stripes indicating compartmented intelligence, rushed to Moscow by special courier. The captain writes only the essential facts. Intensive ASW activity encountered, continuous tracking for extended period, patrol terminated early, returning to base. He does not speculate about American capabilities. He does not editorialize about the psychological impact. He reports what happened and lets the admirals draw their own conclusions. But K-19's experience was not isolated. While Zatayev was being tracked off Cape Cod, 5 other Hotel-class submarines were conducting patrols across the North Atlantic. K-16 was detected by Canadian Maritime Patrol aircraft, despite operating beneath the thermal layer at 200 meters depth. K-178 was localized by American destroyers within 30 minutes of arriving at her patrol station east of Newfoundland. K-149, operating with absolute acoustic discipline off the Virginia Capes, found herself bracketed by sonobuoys while still 200 kilometers from the coast. K-155, detected and tracked continuously for 19 hours during transit of the GIUK Gap, despite running submerged through a severe autumn gale that should have rendered sonar useless. K-145, approached by an American submarine that surfaced directly ahead of her position in the Norwegian Sea, close enough that the Soviet officer of the watch could see American sailors smoking cigarettes on the other boat's bridge through the periscope. Every boat, every single Hotel-class patrol conducted between August and October 1961 ended with detection and tracking by American or NATO forces. The pattern was undeniable. This was not coincidence. This was not luck. This was systematic surveillance that suggested the Americans possessed capabilities that Soviet naval intelligence had not predicted, and Soviet technology could not match. The pattern file lands on Admiral Sergei Gorshkov's desk in early November. He reads the patrol reports in his office, overlooking the gray Moscow streets, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling as he absorbs the implications. 6 submarines, 6 patrols, 6 demonstrations of American tracking superiority. The ballistic missile submarine force that was supposed to guarantee Soviet strategic deterrence has been rendered tactically impotent before achieving full operational capability. Gorshkov convenes a crisis meeting. The conference room fills with smoke and tension as senior intelligence officers present their analysis. Maps on the walls show patrol routes marked in blue, detection points marked in red, so much red that the Atlantic appears to be bleeding. Every attempted patrol has been compromised. Every approach to American waters has been detected. The submarines can still launch their missiles, can still deliver nuclear warheads against coastal targets, but they would do so as identified targets under continuous prosecution by forces that have been tracking them since departure. Theories proliferate. Perhaps the Americans have developed satellite surveillance capable of detecting the thermal wake left by nuclear reactors. Ocean physicists calculate that such wakes exist, but are microscopically small, undetectable from orbit, with any plausible sensor technology. Perhaps American sonar has achieved a generational leap in sensitivity, allowing detection at ranges previously thought impossible. But sonar requires bearing data from multiple platforms for precise localization, cannot explain how American forces position themselves ahead of Soviet submarines before they arrive. Could there be a spy? Counterintelligence begins investigating every officer with access to patrol schedules. They monitor families, check financial records, interview crew members about suspicious behavior. They find the normal inefficiencies of a large bureaucracy, some drunkenness, minor corruption, sexual indiscretions, but no systematic espionage that could explain the comprehensive nature of American tracking. The exotic theories emerge from desperation: magnetic anomaly detection from high-altitude aircraft, bioluminescence trails visible from space, thermal signatures detectable by infrared sensors. Each theory is examined, calculated, tested. Each theory fails to explain the precision and consistency of American surveillance. Then, in July 1962, K-155's sonar operator detects something impossible. Senior Lieutenant Mikhail Rudnitsky is manning the acoustic station, headphones pressed against his ears, monitoring the passive array for threats. The boat is operating 180 kilometers southeast of Bermuda, running submerged at 4 knots, maintaining strict acoustic discipline. Standard patrol, routine surveillance, nothing unusual on the sonar displays. Then he hears it, a clicking sound, mechanical, regular, repeating every 12 seconds with crystalline clarity, despite originating from a source the Chiffon passive array calculates at over 30 kilometers distant. The signature matches nothing in Soviet acoustic libraries. It resembles no biological source. It propagates through water with energy levels that violate conventional understanding of long-range sound transmission. Rudnitsky calls the captain to the sonar station. They listen together, recording the signature on magnetic tape, plotting its bearing. The clicking maintains constant bearing, despite K-155's slow movement through the water. This means it is not a fixed installation on the sea floor. This means something is tracking the submarine's position, adjusting its own location to maintain geometric relationship. The captain orders a radical course change, 90-degree turn, increase to 8 knots, see if the clicking source adjusts. Within 6 minutes, the bearing changes. The mysterious source has re-established its position directly abeam of K-155's new heading. They try again. Course reversal combined with depth change to 250 meters. The clicking adjusts again, maintaining its station relative to the submarine with precision that eliminates coincidence. When an American destroyer appears on sonar 90 minutes later, steaming directly towards them from the exact bearing of the clicking signature, the implication becomes impossible to ignore. The clicking is not environmental noise. It is an American tracking system, and K-155 has stumbled into detecting it through some combination of favorable acoustic conditions and a sonar operator's exceptional hearing. The magnetic tapes reach Moscow within 72 hours. Dr. Leonid Brekhovsky, the Soviet Union's leading underwater acoustics expert, assembles a team to analyze the recordings in soundproofed laboratories where spectrum analyzers and oscilloscopes measure every frequency component. every temporal pattern, every subtle variation that might reveal the signature's origin. The analysis takes 2 weeks. The conclusion rewrites Soviet understanding of American anti-submarine warfare capabilities. The clicking represents an active sonar system of extraordinary sophistication, probably using extremely low frequencies to achieve maximum range, possibly employing signal processing techniques that Soviet technology cannot replicate. More disturbing is the implication about network architecture. If a single sonar source can track submarines across 30 kilometers while maintaining precise bearing information, then multiple such sources positioned across the Atlantic could create a surveillance grid of continental scale. The engineering would be monumental. The cost would be staggering. But the physics is sound, and the evidence from Rudnitsky's recordings suggests the Americans have built exactly such a network. Enormous hydrophone arrays stretching for kilometers across the ocean floor, cables connecting them to shore stations where computers process incoming signals, coverage extending across the approaches to North America and critical choke points like the GUK Gap. A system sensitive enough to detect Soviet submarines at ranges of hundreds, perhaps thousands of kilometers. SOSUS. The acronym appears in intercepted American communications, details unknown, but context suggesting this sound surveillance system represents generational superiority in underwater warfare. Soviet submarines have not been detected through clever tactics or fortunate patrol patterns. They have been swimming through an invisible net, their acoustic signatures collected by seafloor arrays, their positions plotted in American operations centers before they even reach their patrol stations. Admiral Gorshkov receives the technical assessment in August 1962. The document is clinical, precise, devastating. Hotel-class submarines generate acoustic signatures powerful enough to be detected by SOSUS arrays at ranges exceeding 1,000 kilometers under favorable propagation conditions. The noisy pressurized water reactors, the inadequate acoustic isolation, the reduction gear whine, all of it combines to broadcast their presence across the entire American surveillance network the moment they leave port. The strategic implications are brutal. If submarines cannot hide, then the entire concept of sea-based deterrence requires rethinking. The hotel-class boats were designed to cruise undetected to launch positions, to wait in silent readiness until ordered to fire, to survive long enough to execute their mission. But SOSUS eliminates the first condition. Undetected approach is impossible when every transit generates tracking data immediately available to American commanders. Soviet submarines might still reach their launch positions, might still fire their missiles, but they would do so as identified targets under active prosecution by anti-submarine warfare forces who have been following them since departure. In wartime, those forces would simply attack immediately rather than shadow. The ocean transit becomes a running battle that most Soviet submarines would not survive. The technical challenge of defeating SOSUS appears nearly insurmountable. Reducing submarine acoustic signatures to levels below detection thresholds would require complete redesign. New reactors with sophisticated noise isolation, propellers optimized for cavitation reduction, machinery mounted on advanced vibration dampening systems, hull coatings that absorb rather than reflect sound. Such submarines exist on drawing boards in Soviet design bureaus, but translating concepts to operational hardware will require years of development and enormous industrial investment. In the meantime, the existing fleet continues operations with full awareness that concealment is impossible. Every patrol generates intelligence for American targeting. The boats survive only because the Americans choose not to attack. The psychological impact on crews proves severe. Submariners volunteered for underwater service because the beers, depths offered protection, because concealment was the submarine's fundamental advantage. Now, they operate as tracked targets in an enemy surveillance system they cannot escape. Admiral Gorshkov makes the decision that will define Soviet naval development for the next 3 decades. The Soviet Union will continue building ballistic missile submarines, will accept the reality of SOSUS surveillance, will invest massively in acoustic quieting technology to reduce detectability, will simultaneously develop longer-range missiles that allow submarines to launch from Soviet home waters rather than approaching the American coast. The Hotel-class boats will continue patrols because political leadership demands visible demonstration of Soviet naval power, because deterrence requires operational submarines even if their survivability is questionable, because abandoning the program would constitute public admission of American technological superiority. But the Navy will treat these patrols as they truly are: training exercises, proof-of-concept operations, visible symbols of capability, rather than genuine military threats. Captain First Rank Nikolai Vladimirovich Zatayev continues commanding K-19 through 1962 and into 1963. He conducts additional patrols, each one detected within hours of approaching NATO waters, each one tracked by invisible surveillance systems that he has learned to accept, if not understand. The reactor accident of July 1961 made K-19 famous as the Widowmaker, but Zatayev's crew remembers equally the October patrol when they learned that the ocean offered no sanctuary, that American technology operated at levels Soviet intelligence had not predicted, that courage and skill could not overcome systematic technological inferiority. The Hotel-class submarines operate through the 1960s and into the 1970s, increasingly obsolete, increasingly irrelevant to genuine strategic deterrence, but maintained in service because the Soviet Navy needs every available platform. Some boats suffer reactor casualties. Some are modified to carry cruise missiles instead of ballistic weapons. Some simply rust at their moorings, their crews transferred to newer boats with better acoustic isolation and longer-range missiles. The submariners who conducted those early patrols carry their experiences into retirement. In careful whispers, in classified reunions, in memoirs that remain unpublished for decades, they tell stories about the years when Soviet ballistic missile submarines operated as tracked targets, about desperate attempts to understand why every patrol ended in detection, about the slow realization that they were not fighting tactical battles, but facing systemic technological inferiority that no amount of crew excellence could overcome. SOSUS remains operational for decades, upgraded and expanded, serving as the foundation of American anti-submarine warfare superiority throughout the Cold War.
And that was the Cold War. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.